Once upon a time, in the city of Accra, lived a woman whose name was Afia. She was so beautiful that people stopped to stare wherever she went. However, one day, the people realized that the woman who they so admired was in fact HIV positive. Afia arrived at church one morning and decided to give a testimony that shook the very foundation of the church. She narrated how she was born with HIV and how the sickness had drained her both emotionally and physically. Afia burst out in tears as the entire church grew silent. Listening to her, she narrated the whole story to them. She spoke of nights when she cried herself to sleep, not because of the sickness in her blood, but because of the stigma in people's eyes. She told them of men who promised her love, only to vanish once they heard her status. She told them of friends who stopped sharing cups with her, who whispered behind her back, and who used her name as an insult. Then, in a voice that carried both pain and power, Afia declared, "I am not my sickness. I am a daughter of God, beautifully and wonderfully made. HIV is in my blood, but it is not in my soul, and I refuse to live in shame any longer." At that moment, the church erupted. Some wept openly, whilst others rushed to embrace her. Several congregants offered her money and help. Families pledged to support her, and the church leaders themselves announced that a GoFundMe would be created to sustain her care. Afia could not help but look overwhelmed with gratitude. That Sunday alone, she made millions in donations. The church celebrated her bravery, and her name spread throughout the city. Months passed, and Afia told everyone that cared to listen about her HIV status. Each time she shared, more money poured in. NGOs reached out, journalists covered her story, strangers transferred money to her account just to support her courage, and in no time, Afia became richer than she had ever imagined. However, what they did not know was that Afia was never HIV positive. She had lied to the church, lied to the city, and lied to the entire world. For Afia, it did not matter that stigma followed her, so long as wealth followed too. She would rather be called the HIV woman and live in luxury than be her true self and live in lack. Afia deceived everyone. She built a mansion, bought cars, and lived lavishly while the world thought that they were helping a suffering woman. However, one Sunday, the pastor revealed to the congregation that Afia was lying. He told his church members that God revealed to him in a dream that Afia never had HIV, and the entire church erupted in panic. Afia sat on her chair shocked. She did not see it coming and had to do something fast to protect the empire that she had built from her lies. Before the congregation could even catch their breath, Afia stood up and raised her voice. "Pastor, you dare not lie against me. You are the one who asked me to give you a share of the money people donated. Because I refused, now you want to frame me before the people?" The entire congregation opened their mouths in shock. A heavy silence swept across the hall. Eyes darted from Afia to the pastor, searching for truth. The pastor stammered, trying to defend himself, but the seed of doubt had already been planted. So many people were disappointed. Some even left the church in anger, muttering that their spiritual leader was corrupt. Others shouted at Afia, demanding that she provided proof of her status if she was truly innocent. The church became divided, chaos filling the sanctuary where peace once lived. Afia knew that she had to act quickly. She left the church that day and devised a plan. She went to her childhood friend Adua, who worked at a reputable hospital. In tears, she begged her to fabricate a test result that would prove that she was HIV positive. Adua refused at first, horrified at the request, but Afia leaned closer and whispered the secret that she had kept for years. A secret that Adua had once cheated on her husband with another man. "If you don't help me," Afia threatened coldly, "I will tell your husband everything, and there's nothing you will do to stop me." Terrified of losing her marriage, Adua reluctantly gave in. She risked her job, her reputation, to create a forged result, stamping it with the hospital's official seal. Armed with the fabricated document, Afia returned to the church. She held it high before the congregation and declared, "Here is my proof from one of the most trusted hospitals in the city. Am I now a liar?" The crowd gasped as they read the letterhead. The hospital was indeed reputable, and the result seemed genuine. Many who doubted her were silenced. The pastor tried to protest, but several people left his church immediately, calling him a false prophet. Others, however, remained suspicious. Still, Afia had won the moment. She left the church and never returned again. That day marked the beginning of Afia's popularity. She even began to call herself the HIV Queen. People bashed her parents for their role in her current suffering. She was invited to several events to speak on her life, and each speaking engagement that she honored made her more popular as she used the popularity to solicit for more funds. Thousands of people fell for her lies as Afia became richer as each second passed. Her followers multiplied overnight. Every post she made went viral, and Afia could not get enough of the attention that she was getting. She posed in designer outfits, captioning them with words like, "HIV did not break me, I broke HIV." People clapped for her in the comments, saying that Afia was a national hero. They even called her a motivation and praised her courage. Soon, brands began to notice her too. Clothing companies, cosmetic firms, and even pharmaceutical giants used her face in campaigns. Afia basked in her newfound glory, strutting across stages as if she owned the place. One day, she bumped into a man who she had been with for years before she took on her new identity. Afia could not believe her eyes. The man, whose name was Kojo, turned out to be the interviewer who she was slated to speak with at a huge fundraising event. When she came face to face with him, Afia could not help but stutter. "What are you doing here?" she asked Kojo, who informed her that time had come for him to expose her lies. "You have fooled people for so long, Afia, taking their money and pretending to be a hero. I have come to expose you for the liar that you are, because we both know that you are not HIV positive, as you have always claimed. I was with you for months, and I never contracted the virus. How then can you say that you were born with a virus that should have been in your blood from birth?" Kojo's words struck Afia like lightning. For a moment, she froze, her lips trembling as the walls of her empire seemed ready to collapse. But Afia was not a woman who surrendered easily. She forced a smile, pretending not to be shaken, and replied him saying, "Kojo, you are bitter. You couldn't keep me then, and you can't break me now. If you want to play games, then let's see who wins," she said to Kojo, who stood there and watched as she walked out on him pridefully. However, deep inside, Afia knew that Kojo was a very dangerous threat. If the interview holds, Afia knew that her world would finally collapse. So, she had to act fast, faster than she had ever acted before. Afia walked around the venue restless. She caught sight of two men walking into the venue from the backstage and decided to execute her evil plan. Afia slipped into the backstage area, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. She brought out a lighter from her bag and lit the curtain on fire. Afia watched with satisfaction as the flames engulfed the fabric in an instant. The smoke curled upwards as chaos erupted in the whole venue. People began to scream as the guests panicked and ran outside the venue for safety. The security rushed to evacuate the hall as fire alarms began to go off. The organizers had no other option but to cancel the entire program, and Kojo could not hide his fury. He knew that this was no ordinary accident, but he had no proof to substantiate his claims. He watched in anger as Afia stood peacefully among the guests as she played her role perfectly, coughing lightly, fanning the smoke as she consoled frightened women who were all standing beside her. No one suspected Afia had anything to do with it. In fact, some even praised her for how calm she remained during the chaos. The interview never happened, and Afia's secrets remained hidden. Afia returned home that night, smiling to herself. Once again, she had outsmarted Kojo. Once again, she had kept her empire alive. The fire was written off as an unfortunate accident, and her calm behavior during the chaos only won her more admiration. Money flowed in the next morning as more people sent her donations, praising her strength. But greed is a dangerous master. Afia was never satisfied. The more she had, the more she wanted. So when she was told that a wealthy philanthropist who often funded health causes was at a mental clinic in a remote village far away from Accra, Afia did not hesitate. She put on her most elegant dress, sprayed her most expensive perfume, and went out to meet with him. The moment she stepped through the gates of the clinic, the atmosphere shifted. Sirens began to wail, and workers ran up and down in confusion. "Lockdown! Lockdown!" A nurse shouted. "One of the patients have escaped." Afia froze, bewildered. She thought about leaving immediately, but before she could, two orderlies spotted her. Their eyes widened, and without a word, they rushed at her, grabbing her arms. "That's her!" one of them shouted. "The escaped patient! That's her!" Afia's heart thundered. "What are you talking about? I'm not a patient here. I came to see someone." But the more she struggled, the more she looked deranged. Her designer wig slipped off in the scuffle, and her eyes, wide with fear, only made her look mad. Dragged through the corridors, she screamed, "Do you know who I am? I am the queen of HIV. Everyone knows me." But the staff exchanged uneasy glances. To them, she sounded exactly like a delusional patient lost in her fantasies. They locked her up in a ward to ensure that she doesn't escape again. Afia could not stop screaming at them to set her free. "I am not who you think I am," she said as she banged on the door. "Check online for the queen of HIV and you'll see that I am not mad," she said to the staff, who all laughed and continued their business. People in this village had never heard of Afia. In fact, no one knew that Afia was actually telling the truth. The more she called herself the queen of HIV, the more they were convinced that she was their patient. Little did they know that their real patient was out there. That night, Afia slept in the mental clinic, dressed as a patient of the hospital. For all these years, Afia never knew that she was a twin. Her late mother, years ago, had given one of her daughters up for adoption. Shortly after they were born, the child grew up broken and eventually lost her sanity and was admitted into this very institution. Afia did everything possible to clear the air, stating that she was a popular celebrity who everyone knew as the queen of HIV. For weeks, no one cared to verify, as Afia looked deranged in their eyes. So she remained in the hospital under maximum supervision as the clinic did everything possible to prevent her from escaping again. However, one evening, Afia's picture popped on the screen as the media reported her missing. No one had seen her for weeks, and this stirred a national outcry. "Where is the queen of HIV?" people asked, as others began to speculate that she had been kidnapped. Some even believed that she had traveled abroad secretly, not knowing that their hero was now confined in a mental hospital. "That's me! That's me! I'm not supposed to be here." But before they could look at the screen, the image had been wiped off. The staff all looked at her as unstable. They shook their heads and tightened their restrictions, ensuring that Afia had no way to escape. Afia, who had built an empire out of lies, was now trapped in a lie greater than her own, confined in a mental institution where no one believed who she was. One morning, she cried her eyes out, pleading for the nurses to search online for the queen of HIV. At first, all the nurses ignored her, but when they saw her persistence, they decided to search the name online to see what they would find. Lo and behold, they found images and videos of her with top personalities in the country. Everyone opened their mouths in shock as they watched her videos, which were created at a time when their patient was confined in the hospital. They took the video to the head of the facility, who decided to meet with her. He arrived at ward and showed her the video, asking if she was the woman there, and Afia nodded her head in agreement, stating that his staff mistook her for another woman. "I was here to meet with Mr. Kwame when the whole misunderstanding happened. I've been locked in here for weeks, and would like to be released immediately. Afia said to the man, who insisted that her story must first be verified. Firstly, Mr. Kwame has never been to this hospital before, raising suspicions that your story is made up. He said to Afia, who stood there frozen, unable to believe what was happening. If you say you are not our patient, then prove it. You claim you are the HIV queen. Then, we must verify your status. If your HIV test comes out positive, we will release you. If not, you remain here, as this proves that you are indeed our patient. Afia's blood ran cold. She knew that God was punishing her for all the atrocities that she had committed. For years, her empire had thrived on forged papers and lies. But here in this clinic, the truth could no longer be hidden. Her test results returned negative, and Afia knew that nothing she would say at this point would convince them of who she truly is. So, she decided to wait, hoping that a miracle happens. That evening, Afia fell into a very deep sleep and was awoken by a sharp pain on her arm. A fellow patient in her ward gave her an injection while she was asleep. Afia screamed out in terror as she pulled her arm away, watching as the injection fell to the ground. Nurses rushed in as they restrained the other patient and calmed the ward. Shaking, Afia realized that if she stayed here any longer, she might not leave with her mind intact. She requested to make a call, pleading with the staff to let her speak to someone. The staff at first hesitated, but seeing all that had happened with the other patient, they decided to treat her with a little leniency. They gave her the phone, under close observation, as Afia dialed the phone number and waited for the receiver to pick. It was her pastor, the same man who she accused of trying to make money out of her when he revealed to his congregation that Afia was lying about her HIV status. Afia's claims nearly destroyed his church, as so many people believed her claims and left the church. Afia at this point knew that only her pastor could save her. She apologized to him for all that she did, narrating how she was currently locked up in a mental hospital. Afia pleaded for the pastor's help. She pleaded for him to save her, and her pastor kept quiet for a very long time. Afia could hear her heart race as she wondered what would become of her if her pastor refuses to help. Afia remembered years ago how kind her pastor was to her when he found out that she had HIV. He set up a GoFundMe account for her and even solicited for funds to help her. Despite this, Afia dragged his name in the mud like some animal. She never felt a need to correct the narrative, even when she knew that her actions could end up ruining his church. She stood there, hoping that he would agree to help, when her pastor informed her that he would help on only one condition. Afia had to tell the whole world the truth. Confess publicly, and I will do everything within my power to set you free, he said as Afia stood there frozen, unsure of what to do. Afia saw herself between the devil